This video is a continuation of my dimmer series, and I had the requirement for a low-powered dimmer circuit in my RV for my control console, and I'll show you how that's done in a different video, but I came up with 4 different dimmers. This dimmer is a PWM dimmer, which is a high-power dimmer up to 4 amps. This is a low-power version of the same dimmer. In fact, it uses the same board, just a different output stage. And this is around 400 milliamp output. And this one is a linear version and about 800 milliamperes. In fact, this is actually a linear power supply. And even though an LED is a current operated device, you can change the current by changing the voltage. And we're just using an adjustable power supply, which really does a pretty good job for low current dimmers. And finally, I have this dimmer module, which is a self-contained module, and we can look at the back of it. It's actually my super dimmer, which if you watch any of my other videos, here is one of my super dimmers I built last year. And the main difference is the super dimmer is designed to work with the Link wireless or some other wireless receiver for a total control system in your RV. This one is a standalone version, and it has its own receiver built in. And it just uses one of these little transmitters. And I'm going to do another video where I replace my undersink LED strip dimmer with this one, because this has a couple advantages. Number one, it's got a remote control, and number two, which I really like, you can put a turn off delay on. So what I mean is, once you turn this on, after 1, 2, or 4 hours, depending on where you have these switches, it'll automatically turn off. This will fit anywhere in the RV where you just need a dimmer. You can just install this flush with the wall, and then you'll have the dimmer. It's a on-off switch here, so that it doesn't draw any power when it's off. And like my super dimmers, the mode is one switch is on, one switch is dim, and the other switch is off. And then, of course, if you have auto off on, at 1 hour, 2 hours, or 4 hours after the last time you did something with this button, it'll automatically turn off. With these, I don't have the knobs on them, but they're also on-off switch at the end, and then they just dim. So I'm going to use these in various projects, but I'm using this video just to show you the overall design of these dimmers, and they're actually fairly universal. Now, the main difference between these and one you may buy commercially, these are low side only, and I could have made high side, but that makes the board bigger, and my needs at the time were not necessarily require a high side dimmer, so I just built them as low side, which includes this one. Unlike some dimmers, you can turn the power off, and so you're not drawing any current when the dimmer is turned off. This is PWM, and by changing the capacitor, you can actually change the PWM frequency. Some 12-volt LED fixtures are said to be not dimmable. Well, the main reason is because of the PWM frequency of the dimmer is interfering with the PWM frequency of the LED driver, because they both use PWM. Well, these, if you run into that situation, you can change the frequency by changing this capacitor out. And on my website, I'll have a chart on there showing what capacitor selection to go with for what particular frequency. They all have a TVS surge suppression diode in here. Now, there are a couple dimmers out on the market that do have some sort of surge protection. All of my dimmers all have transient voltage suppression protection. And because of that, they all have a fuse. And this fuse really is not considered replaceable, because when the TVS diode goes out, it's going to blow the fuse. So if you replace the fuse and you didn't replace the diode, you just keep blowing the fuse out. So there's no reason to have a replaceable fuse. However, this is unsolderable, so if you ever run into a problem where the diode fails, which can happen if you have a lot of transients, then you just simply replace the diode and the fuse, and the board's back in business. We also have on each one of these boards a spot for a panel mount LED, sort of like this one. When you have this thing almost fully dimmed, especially in the daytime, when you're leaving the campsite, you may forget to turn it off because it's so dim that maybe you don't see it in the daylight. This pilot light never dims. It's always full strength, so it'll tell you if this is on or not, so you can turn this off. And these do require a little bit of residual current, so if you leave them turned on and you put the RV in storage, you could come back with a dead battery. So this is optional, but it kind of reminds you to, turn it off when you're done camping. And this one, if you have the need for a power supply, you could use this as a power supply instead of a dimmer. So as long as you're not exceeding around 800 milliamperes of load, then you could use this as basically a 0 to 10 volt power supply. And like all my projects, there is a full set of instructions on my website to build each and every one of these 4 different dimmers by clicking on the link I provide here. And I have a test set up here. I have a 12 volt power supply. I have my mock-up board. This is my little light. This is about a half-watt light that I want to dim. And I've got a pigtail on here, and this may be a little dangerous, but it'll be okay. I've got my linear dimmer, my high power dimmer, and my low power dimmer, PWM dimmers. So we'll try the linear dimmer first. Make sure this is all the way counterclockwise so the power's off. Power supply to the one connector and the light to the other connector. Now when we turn it on, it's still off, but as we rotate clockwise, you'll see that the light becomes full brightness. So now we'll try one of the PWM dimmers. And we'll start off with the low power one again. Make sure that this thing's off. And when we turn it on, you'll notice that it's full brightness on this one. Then when we turn clockwise, it becomes dim. And where the other one, as you turn clockwise, it became brighter. And it's just a variance in the different way that I had to design the circuit board. And it's not a real big issue as far as I'm concerned. Now, another thing you may notice, with this one, you can never turn it off 100%. And that's just a characteristic of the integrated circuit that I use that provides the PWM pulsing. And then finally, the high-powered version, and again, it has the same dimming range. So these are the 3 dimmers that I have designed for just kind of a universal use. And this operates identically almost to the super dimmers that I've built earlier. To turn it on, we just turn on the on-off switch, and then we do get an indication. The mode switch has 3 modes. The first mode is on, the second mode is dim, and then we can adjust from all the way on to darn near off. And then the third mode is off. I do have the indication here so that when you pack up, if you've left this on in the daytime when it's dimmed fully, you may not see it. You don't want this thing to sit around and drain your battery, because this takes about 30 milliamperes, which isn't a lot by itself, but all these little loads add up, and you can actually drain your battery with this. So this little light will kind of give you an indication that, hey, make sure you turn this off. And we can also control it with this little transmitter button, and it works the same way as the mode switch. We turn it on, dim, and bring it up a little so you get and off. So on, dim, off. And like the other ones I've designed for my RV that I put in my control panel, this is also interactive. So you can turn it on, you can dim it, you can turn it off, you can turn it on, dim it, turn it off. So either one will work. We do have an auto off like we did as an option for the other ones. And if you turn this on, this will leave the dimmer on either in full brightness or in dim mode for either 1 hour, 2 hour, or 4 hours, depending on the setting. And so, for example, when we turn the light on and say we have to set for 1 hour, 1 hour later, this will turn off. Of course, if you want to disable that, you just turn auto off. Now, say a half hour goes by and you dim it, this gets reset to an hour or whatever the setting would be. We have a piece of Perspex here that protects all the wiring, and you can see here is the mode button, and 1 is pushed up and 2 is pushed down, and that stands for 1 hour. If we want 2 hours, we push that down and then push number 2 up, and if we want 4 hours, we push both of them up. And if they're both down, then it's disabled. Here is a receiver, In fact, you can build this without the receiver if you want, if you don't have a requirement for it. You just leave the receiver off.